Welcome to Philly Fortune Talks with your host, Jake Penny, where the city's brightest minds share the secrets behind their success. Are you ready to be inspired?
Imagine expanding a real estate empire across major U.S. cities while staying dedicated to family. Today, we delve into the journey of Dan Breslin, founder of Diamond Equity Investments. Starting in 2006, Dan moved from Philadelphia to Chicago in 2014 to be a more present father, simultaneously expanding his real estate investment company to include Chicago and Atlanta. Diamond Equity Investments, a high-volume house flipping organization, bought and sold 330 houses in 2023 with a $57 million volume and continues to thrive in 2024. The company also ventures into commercial real estate and land development. We have Dan Breslin on the show today. Dan, it's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Jake. Appreciate the invite.
So Dan, you know, your journey in real estate began in 2006, if I have that correct. Can you share what initially motivated you to enter the real estate industry?
Yeah, I always wanted to flip houses when I was like 9, 10. My dad had a couple rentals and I kind of grew up like
Oh,
sanding the
nice.
drywall, spackle, that kind of stuff. And I did the math on his rental was maybe 350 bucks a month. And I think the mortgage when he was all said and done was like 175 or something. I'm like, man, $175. This beats my paper route hands down, and you only do the work once. So ever since then, I wanted to get in real estate. '06 is when my dad actually happened upon, he kind of like got rid of the rentals, had a little bit of business troubles. My dad's actually coming on my podcast and we're telling the origination story.
Nice.
Yeah, it'll be out any day now. But we went to some of those kind of get rich in real estate seminars that I'm sure people have either gone to or seen the advertisements for. And we learned a lot of great information here, and it put me way ahead of the people when I came back to the Philadelphia market. I was, way ahead in terms of all the options and where to get the money and how to generate the deals than, when you just try to blindly find your way through it as a flipper, if you will.
Right. No, I totally understand that going blindly. That's going to be a dangerous road for sure.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
take one and done deal to, spoil the egg forever. So, what inspired you to move to Chicago and expand Diamond Equity Investments and to include Chicago and Atlanta regions?
Yeah, I mean, the company has these three major markets now, Atlanta, Philly, and Chicago. And I can't say like I sat down in 2006 and had this great vision and goal. I have experienced struggle with drug addiction and alcoholism for the first half of my life, I guess. And it wasn't until 2012 when I was 32. Around 31, I picked up the Bible, and then 32 was able to stop drinking, smoking, any of the extracurricular kind of things on January 21st, 2012. And it's been, God willing, I guess 12 years and a half coming up here any day. So that really made all the difference in my business, in my life, my ability to be a real father, family member, friend, business partner, etc. So you figure from 2012 to 2014, we were like gaining momentum in the Philly market. And I remember having a goal, like I'm going to move to Chicago within a year. It happened at like one of these like, guru type seminars, and we were doing a vision for our year for the next. And it was like, all the time, I think, Jake, a lot of people come up, at least in our real estate circles, like the vision for life is so income oriented, number of units oriented. Oh, I want to have $1 million net worth. I want $20,000 a month in cash flow, or whatever these like big, hairy, audacious goals are. And I remember this was like one of the first goals that had nothing to do with the money, and it made way more of an impact, in the end on the bottom line and the money and those kind of things sort of just followed. I feel like God put it on my heart. I had to go to Chicago, regardless of whether the business I had built in Philadelphia failed or continued to thrive and succeed. And it was like, I threw all my stuff in the back seat of the car. It was like laundry basket, some pots and pans, and maybe my computer. And I remember leaving like all my books in my old office there. I left like all the furniture in the apartment that a friend of mine took over the lease, the next year, and just kind of like moved into what I had left there. So the Chicago move was, divinely inspired. I knew if I looked back on that, Jake, and I didn't do it then, I would regret that moment on my deathbed. And my daughter and I guess she was 12, 13 through when she left to go to college. It was a phenomenal chance for me to like step up and be a real dad instead of these like, weekend a month kind of plane visit things when I could afford the ticket. That was a really hard time for me, the plane ticket weekend kind of situation. So that was over. And the irony is she went back to Philadelphia to go to Temple, and I'm like still here in Chicago. So
Oh
go
man.
figure. Yeah.
Hey, no, that's awesome. I love the divine intervention, the divine presence. That's awesome that you got that. Um, oh man, what do we want to call it? That uh, you know, voice from God, that brought you over there. That's awesome. I'm into spirituality as well. I grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school my whole life. Um, but definitely, yeah, God speaks at moments and you need to answer to him, and he guides the way for sure.
Yeah. Amen.
Your background in construction, how's that influenced your leadership style and diamond equity? Because you said you remember spackling, sanding, doing this stuff when you were a kid, which is awesome. My I had no idea what a stud was. My first rental property, I installed cabinets, thought the stud was, me in the mirror.
Oh
And
man.
and tenant moved in, and the property manager said, you know what the F a stud is? And I said, no, not at all. He was like, how'd you install the cabinets? I said, I drilled them into the drywall. He said, well, they just fell off the effing wall while this tenant was taking a shower. And I was like, oh shit. So that's awesome. You have a construction background, stemming, since you were a kid. So again, how does that like influence your leadership style, your vision towards real estate?
Yeah, I think it's helpful for sure. At first, it was a little bit of a hindrance because, I mean, I was lucky to do like 4 or 5 deals, got some like JV partners, 2 flips in my first year, um, and had like pretty good momentum in 2006. But I think my hindrance there from the construction is when I started getting some of the bids, like at the time in '06, I was kind of like failing out of life. I didn't have a job. It was like real estate had to work. I was doing like handyman stuff, painting, my aunt's closet doors or something, like whatever would come along to sort of keep my bills paid as I was getting into real estate. But when I saw the bids come from like the electrician in particular, and he gave me a fair price, but I'm like, oh my God, $4,800 for this? I was like, I know I could do this, and I'm ahead. I'm like 25, $30 an hour probably, and I could go in there and do it myself. So I kind of like did this hands-on approach that probably kept me away from higher value activities. And the highest value activity, in my opinion, is probably like 1 and 2 in what we do, fixing up, flipping houses, is like my business. I'm not the rental guy. I have rentals. I'm not great at it. I don't do a good job managing them. I'm going to sell them all off and get a beach house so that it's easier to manage one beach house instead of all the rentals. But as far as like you're going to build a sustainable, active real estate investing, fix and flip business, you better be really consistent with finding people to make offers to, and then following up and negotiating on those offers. And those are the two things I'll see most people subconsciously avoid. They will avoid making the offer up front, and then they'll be like, they didn't take my offer, and there's no additional follow-up. And so the people who really succeed long term, I mean, let's face it, Jake, you got to follow up with um, you know, 20, 30, 40 people who told you basically to go to hell. And one of them is going to, pop up like a popcorn kernel once the heat gets right and turn into a deal. And the issue is that doesn't happen always 6 days later. Sometimes, right? Sometimes it does. Sometimes it's 6 months or 6 years later. It's like, are you going to work for 6 years to do the business? And so, these days I don't run the electrical wiring in any of our projects, and it all is going to land on the contractors, and we overpay and they don't do the greatest job sometimes. But my ability and my team's ability to make those offers and manage those negotiations long term, I mean, that's probably a big component of why we did such volume that we did last year, because we make a lot more offers than most other people, and we continue in following up. Even in the face of no, go to hell, it's not a deal, we're not accepting it, blah blah blah. It's like time and circumstances make money, and if you're not there over the course of time, you don't deserve that deal.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people see this like get rich quick scheme, and they think real estate, whether whatever investment vehicle you're in real estate, whether that's wholesale and fix and flips, rentals, sub two, whatever, they think that it's just going to happen overnight. I mean, shit, my parabolic, you know, event didn't happen in real estate until I was doing it for like, 5 years. It was like turning and burning for 5 years. And then it was like that, all that work and all those chips started stacking up and then it took off. But most people won't do that, you know? Um, so yeah,
What made your parabolic moment when you look back? Like what happened then in terms of deal flow? What was like the catalyst or the thing from someone looking on the outside that would like more clearly define that parabolic event?
um, putting down all the shiny object syndromes, all the extra shiny objects that are out there. Oh, like I'll try to do this or I'll try to do that. It's like trying to be a jack of all but a master of none. It's like, okay, well, I had a landscaping company and I did landscaping on the side. So I had that. And that was all that money was fueling into real estate for marketing and everything like that. Um, and then I also realized I wasn't a wholesaler. I wasn't a creative finance guy. I wasn't a self-storage dude. I'm a full gut burr guy. That's what I'm doing. That's what I am. That's all I do. And once I focused on that one thing and I'm mastering that one thing, that's when I was like, oh, I went from 7 units to 100 units in a few short years. And I was like, shit, well, this fucking works. I need to stick to this and only this. And every now and then there's like that thing creeps in like the devil. It's like, oh, well, know about this. You'll make more money. It's cool. And, I just get brought back into like, no, this is it. Focus on your bread and butter and just keep doing what you do.
Yeah, I can relate to that. We have that with, shopping center investment and building self-storage units is like one of the things we kind of have going on in the background. And it's like, is commercial real estate the shiny object thing? I don't know. To us and to me, it makes sense because there's a level of scale that comes later in
Right.
the career. So you're 10 years, 15, I'm like coming up on 20 years in the business. I need simplification. I need scale. For me, it's like the 49 units that I have, even through the management company, it's like those little micro intrusions of having to like figure out, make little decisions on renovation, turnover, and signing a listing agreement and blah, 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 blah. Like the time is better spent in scale, which is kind of why I'm looking at the shore house, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
But
totally.
our focus is definitely like we fix and flip houses and we like cause a transformation in those properties that and those neighborhoods where we like find those situations and fix them and like turn them around and people are celebrating holidays in there. The holidays that come after we're done doing our thing. I like
Right.
that.
Exactly. I love commercial real estate. Like I'm in a program and everything. I have a mentor. But it was just like a mentor, another mentor, a local mentor was like, dude, what you're doing works. Why are you going to jump over here and potentially affect what you're doing over here? Like you haven't even, crushed your own market yet, or like went to another market to do what you're doing yet. You haven't exhausted it. So why are you trying to give up on that? Like eventually, yeah, self-storage, hell yeah, recession resistant, all that stuff. Small multifamily, 10 to 50 units in the Midwest. Absolutely. And that's the come. But right now it's just like, okay, that's a shiny ball that I haven't graduated to yet. I maybe not, but like I haven't exhausted my backyard resources yet to be able to be like, okay, like let me take a little bit of focus off of that and that go over here. But enough about me. This is about you. um, you know, you've been in this since 2006, right? Before it was even cool. You know, social media has honestly flooded the gates of this market and made it cool. And now everybody thinks there's a real estate investor, and it's, kind of makes it tough on the guys that actually do it. That don't like potentially make it tough. Was there any books or podcasts or, well, probably not even podcasts back then in 2006. I don't know.
No podcasts.
So like books, podcasts, mentors. You said you went to one of those boot camps or something like that. Has there anything that's really stuck out that has had a significant impact on your approach to real estate?
My parabolic moment came when I started reading the Bible. Right, I grew up Catholic too, and I remember having a spiritual awakening, and I go talk to a priest and say something about the Bible, and he said, "Well, Catholics don't read the Bible. That's odd." Um, and specifically the book of Proverbs, when you read that, there's 31 chapters, and that lines up with 31 days in a month. Um, the Proverbs were collected and written by King Solomon. King Solomon was David's son, David and Goliath, the
That's all
story
right.
that people would probably remember. Solomon was like the richest king in all of history, basically, up to that point. And you can condition your mind on how the world works and how business works. The book of Proverbs is kind of like a business book, but more from the spiritual foundation perspective. So, like on the first day of the month, you read chapter 1, and on the second day, you read chapter 2. Fifth day, you're reading chapter 5, and so on. And then when you get to the next month, you repeat. And if you do that for 5 years straight, you'll be a millionaire at the end of the 5 years if you're not already a millionaire. I still do that now, pretty consistently. I haven't hit it every single day. And I find that's like a tuning fork to just kind of stay, balanced and stay focused on business. And like my view of business is I am looking for the inspiration for God. I am looking for divine guidance in the way that we make our decisions, run our business, the way I run my life and wake up on a daily moment. I'm like seeking that all the time. So the book of Proverbs was the most impactful, book, I guess, of the Bible, but I have read the Bible cover to cover. And I remember hearing things like this, Jake, when I was broke and struggling, and maybe I had made some money, periodically, but people would say the number one book on every wealthy person's shelf after the Bible is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I said, well, why aren't we talking about and looking at the Bible then? And that was sort of why I went back and started to kind of cycle through there. So, Think and Grow Rich is good. I've seen people wake up, light up from Think and Grow Rich. The Bible's like the foundation that everything is built on for me. And that happened in 2011. So like I had some success in 06, and you read some books on my podcast site, reidiamonds.com. You can find a reading list I put together, and you'd find like 8 to 10 that are probably very good real estate related books. Like those are the books I have anyone, if they've read all of them and they show up for like an interview to join my team as one of my partners, they're like damn near a shoe-in because their mindset is already created.
It's the Bible's definitely been on my list. I have a library in my house and I read every single day. I tried to, like, for the past 2, 3 years, I've hit close to, if not 52 books a year. And I was never a reader before. I could barely read in high school and school, but it's just I was reading the wrong stuff. But I always wanted to read the Bible, just never have. So I appreciate you bringing that back up because there's a lot we can learn from the Bible. Because if you look at like Napoleon Hill, Walter Wallace, Bob Proctor, Zig Ziglar, all those guys, they all talk. It all comes down to divine presence in their talks. So it's like, okay, like you said, just reverts to the Bible. That's where all that greater divine presence come from, that burning desire, everything. So I appreciate you bringing that back up, and
Yeah, and
it's on my reading list.
if you never read the Bible before, it's a confusing thing to pick up. And a lot of people will pick up the King James version. They're like, "Oh, King James version. This is the closest thing to the real translation." Well, it was done like 1,500 years after it was actually written, and there was like tons of translations when King James version came along. So it's not actually the most accurate um, translation that exists, and it's very difficult for us in our modern time to understand. So like my two tips for anyone who's thinking of reading the Bible is, number one, get a New Living Translation. Simple English written in today's terms. And then number two, especially in our context where people are interested in like, building a business that is successful, I say start with the book of Proverbs and do it in that sort of method that I talked about, or even just like reading it right through, because that is smack in the middle of the Bible and is very relatable. And there's some other books throughout the Bible where it may not sort of add up sequentially or feel applicable to your life, whereas the Proverbs will feel applicable to your life right now. So that would be like my two tips on actually going to read the Bible would be Proverbs and an easy to understand translation.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So you run a highly, highly successful business, real estate, wholesaling, self-storage now as well. How do you approach financial planning to ensure like stability and growth in Diamond Equity Investments and also your other companies as well?
The other companies are minority partners. I'm putting my money to work and those kind of things. I mean, when I approach Diamond Equity, my purpose is to create like a larger opportunity, a larger impact. So we want to impact the neighborhoods where we're doing business. We want to leave a sort of a good stamp behind after we solve whatever the issue is. And Diamond Equity is a market maker, Jake. So like, if I call you, Jake, and I'm like, hey, I got this property, it's a great deal, and it's in the south side of Chicago here, 60636. You're probably like, hey, I just don't buy there, right? And there's a lot of people who are in the Chicago market who are like, I'm not buying there either because it's like a really high crime, high risk kind of neighborhood. There's just tons of money to be made flipping houses in the south side of Chicago. In my opinion, it's one of the best markets that I know about for flipping houses and building a business to be able to like build a machine flipping houses on the south side. Because you make really large profits. You do have to do a high level of construction, but there's also a great number of inventory out there that exists that is distressed and needs to turn over. And in the market that we're in, such low inventory, it's really brought a lot of private capital to sort of rejuvenate that neighborhood. But being a market maker is when they call us there, and I particularly may not want to flip that house there, but we're going to like find a way to like make the market like, hey, this is our offer. We make it work. Someone calls me with a 70,000 square foot retail shopping center. It's the same thing. I'm willing to make the market. Now that seller may not want to accept my market price, but at least he knows where he stands. And we're like, we may not particularly love the demographic or the location or the traffic count, but you know what? If you're standing here and you want to do business with us, fine, but this is the price where we can make it work. So we're a lot less about the buy box and much more about making the market. I enjoy creating huge opportunities for the people that are on my team. So for me, with the guys on my team, it's like, hey, you're having a really good year, save the money, pay your taxes, set up an LLC, give yourself a payroll company. Like the people that are within the company are like partners on each individual deal. And so part of our approach is like financial intelligence to be able to sort of get to the next level. It's like, no, you're better off having $150,000, $200,000 in cash and put that into this other deal in our company at 2 points and 10% interest. And you turn around, you wake up and it pays back 220 grand, I don't know, 9 months later when we're done flipping the house, and you made 20 grand for like doing nothing. And that's a huge barrier for someone to get over, Jake, is the first time you've saved up 200 grand and now you're going to send it off for a private loan. That's a lot more risky in most people's eyes than buying a rental property and like having total control of it. So being able to like make passive investments for people on my team, that's like a part of our leadership. That's part of our style. It's like be frugal, figure out how to make the money, and then let's learn how to like safely invest this money so that the money's working. I have one guy on the team, I think he's going to make like $40,000-$50,000 in interest alone this year from the money that he saved up. And he's a great deal maker, and he's, running tons of flips for us and tons of projects throughout the Northeast. And it's like, he's going to do way better than I used to do in a year off his money alone. Right. So like the finances and that kind of thing for me are important. Final thing I'll say on, running the finances and financial planning is no one's able to do it for you. So a lot of people out here are like, I'm an expert and come do this. and you get on and they're trying to sell you a whole life insurance policy. And fine, maybe that's a good investment for
Yeah.
someone, right? But they're like calling themselves the financial planner, and yet that's the tool they have. Oh, now you're going to borrow the money back and go buy real estate, and there's going to be this double debt service payment thing that is going to come with a lot of risk that you may not actually understand. So I encourage anyone listening who's like climbing the ladder of wealth. My method, at least, was figure out the tax code, learn how to get the tax benefits. If it's cost segregation and we had bonus depreciation, know what that is. If you're making two, three, $400,000 a year and you don't know what that is, you've missed the boat on something and it's going away. And it may come back. It's sitting on the Florida Senate, I believe,
Yep.
still waiting for the vote.
Yep.
And if that comes back, it's going to be great for commercial real estate and for, higher net worth individuals in what they're doing in the investment space. If it doesn't come back, I think we're looking at more of a um, savings and loan crisis type of real estate crash, probably another 1, 2, 3 years out as we see the value continue to unwind from commercial real estate. So you got to take control of your finances. You got to figure out your succession plan. A lot of these topics might appear boring, or I see like somebody I don't know, makes $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year, and he's like, oh, I just need an accountant who like knows how to map all this out. I'm like, dude, you just have to like listen to the podcasts, talk to the guests, interview this guy, talk to that guy. You got to like map out your own financial plan, because what Jake's going to do with his 100+ units is going to be different than what Dan Breslin is going to do with his 49, and trying to fit in to the financial goals of Jake and Dan individually. And how many more for all the, hundreds and thousands of people that are going to listen to the conversation we're having now, right? Everyone's got a variety of different circumstances. So like no one is better at captaining your ship financially than you are.
Yeah, it's just like your body, right? Your body's a machine. They say, "Oh, eat greens, eat this protein, eat that." Dude, that's not the case. Go get a microbiome test. Learn about your body. Your body is not the same as everybody else's. Broccoli could be good for someone else, but it's absolutely terrible for you and hurting you. So it's like the same thing is like exactly what you said. It's like everybody's like, oh, looking for that one size fits all accountant and get me all the tax write-offs as possible. Well, it doesn't work like that. Like you have to build your ship, navigate it, meet the right people. If you're just a income earner, and figure out, okay, you're going to invest in that fund or that syndication. Find somebody that has deals, JV on them, so you can get that, some depreciation or whatever it may be. But no, it's pretty funny too. Like when people save up a lot of money and they tend to hoard it, right? It's like, well, if you're a income earner and you're not doing anything with it, it's dead money sitting in the bank. It's dying, it's losing value every single day. It's not that great of an idea to invest in the stock market. So like you said, invest it into your deals. Become a private money lender. You know, you make awesome, predictable, consistent, and secure returns backed by solid, tangible real estate. I mean, there's nothing better than that. Especially when I'm sure you have crazy buffers on equity in those deals. You're probably buying pennies on the dollar and then you have 40-50% equity on those deals. So it's like everything could potentially go wrong and we're still breaking even or we're making a little bit. So it's like, why wouldn't you want to invest in something like that?
Yeah, and I don't know that, hoarding the cash is such a bad thing. If you got to a place where you've got $2 million in today's money and you're 55 years old, maybe that's the right amount. Maybe you shouldn't be investing in syndications because they can go to zero. Like
Right.
person can get hit by a bus. Look at what is happening in the office sector. Like there can be secular changes in real estate, and real estate goes obsolete. Like, the shore houses down there in Avalon where I'm looking, Jake. Um, Built in 2001 to fucking tear down. Like,
Right.
built in
That's
2004,
insane.
tear down, right? So it's like even the houses are sort of going obsolete. They still will produce some kind of value, but how much more? I don't know. I mean, I'm throwing spitballs out there, but like, does the self storage industry eventually have a different footprint? And a lot of them are, right? It's like you look at Extra Space and public storage, and they've got air conditioned units, and you've got the large elevator drive-in ability to drive
A
inside.
burn rate of 5 years or something like that.
Yeah, and so how much, less desirable is one around the corner? So like, oh, I bought one and it's in a tertiary market. Well, what happens, 15, 20 years from now, it's not a tertiary market and there's a little more growth and Extra Space decides they're building 300,000 square feet near your old dated dilapidated one. That's a secular
Mhm.
change in real estate. So I think there's a place for syndications, but suggest to myself 2 or 3 or 4 years ago when I started getting into them, to know those asset classes and how they work and how they operate, and like learn how the people think about the business, before going into them. And knock on wood, I'm in good syndications as we speak. But like I said, there's a lot of other syndications I know of that went to zero in apartments in the last like 24 months,
Yeah,
right?
big guys too.
Yeah.
Yeah, big guys that have a big name have gone under, and it's just like, oh shit.
Yeah,
So
right.
you gotta know your you gotta know your operators. You have to know the deal. You have to know what you're investing in. And if you haven't, me truly, it's like if you haven't invested in like a small deal, don't jump into a syndication. You know, just like that's just I mean, I still haven't even invested in a syndication. I just like, oh, like you want to have your investors come into our deal. You raise capital, and I'm like, I'm just not comfortable with that. I control my deals. I know how they're going to end up. Like me giving my money or my investors' money to a syndicator or a fund manager, it's just like I don't know what you're going to do. Like there's so many things that I can't control in a different market or whatever. Um, but no, that not all syndications are bad. A lot of them are great, but we're at a market point right now where everybody's squeezing pennies to get another deal done to add 1,000 more units. So it's like it's all about the units, units, units. But what's the actual cash flow? What's the actual um, performance of it? There's I think a lot of that stuff too is also social media, like, hey, I have 4,000 units. Look at me. It's like, okay, dude, you're making like 5, $10 a unit. That's awesome. Like that adds up to money. But it's like, okay, well, how long did it take you to get there? How much work? What's the headache? Like, can't you just do that on a shorter scale with bigger cash flow margins? I don't know. But
Yeah, yeah, I hear that.
so
One
what
of, one of my mentors, right? Like I'm in a 1031 mindset, tax efficiency. I think all this stuff is very important. I'm planning some other 1031s as we speak. I love the cost seg depreciation, and probably one of the biggest lessons for me in 2024, mentor of mine's like, just pay the tax. You make good money on a deal, just pay the tax. Now you have discretionary income.
Yep.
And he brought up a good point with that too, Jake. It's like you don't know what the tax rates are going to be. So if capital gains are 20% this year, but 3 administrations down the line who we haven't met yet, um, turns it into 39% capital gains, and you got to pay the freight, then you're sort of in a tax risk to be in the, bonus depreciation, keep kicking the can down the pike. So there's a balance there of tax efficiency versus getting some after tax income out of the game, if you will, and having that discretionary cash sitting there.
That's why I love the burr.
That's
But
right. You're right.
who knows until when they attack that too. So we'll see. Um, but if you had one piece of advice for a real estate investor looking to make significant impact, start a business, what would it be?
Become the source of deals. There's like three components, in my opinion, to a successful real estate deal. For me, real estate deals are, you got to buy the deal. So the deal's number one. You got to have the capital, right? That's the second pillar. And you have to have the operations for the deal, number three. Operations is getting a tenant in there. It's doing the property management. It's running the contractors, making sure that thing is spick and span to go on the market. Most people, including myself, sat on the sidelines trying to save my way to have enough capital to get the first house. There's always the capital. And the big breakthrough for me in 2006 at that seminar was, no, you can get the deal, and here's hard money lenders, and here's do a JV with someone, and here's you can borrow from self-directed IRAs, and here's this million other ways to put together the capital stack, but you have nothing without the deal. So whatever asset class you're going into, single family homes, apartments, retail, entitling land, storage, office. There's people who are going to be very wealthy who go into office right now and figure out which assets they can pick off and figure out what to do with them. And I don't think office is a long-term secular change. I think that people will come back to those offices in 10 or 15 years and they'll be damn near full with some of the oldest, most obsolete stock ripped out of the ground, as it should be. So figure out the asset class and become the source of deals. And what does that mean? That means make offers and figure out how to get those offers done and make consistent follow-up attempts and nurture those deals to get the actual deal. So if you can become the source of deals and no one's going to get more deals than you, you're going to become rich in real estate.
Absolutely, I agree. So Dan, for the listeners that want to connect with you, learn more about your work, buy deals from you in the Philadelphia, Chicago, Atlanta market, what's the best place for them to go?
So at my website for the podcast, reidiamonds.com, you can sign up for the Jewels of Wisdom newsletter that I send out each Sunday. So that's reidiamonds.com. And I think we have about 255 podcast episodes there as well, ranging from single family residential, raising money, syndications, the whole gamut. It's kind of my own journey from starting in residential and now going through the commercial space.
Awesome, Dan. Well, it was a pleasure to have you on Philly Fortune Talks.
Love it. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to Philly Fortune Talks with Jake Penny. Inspired to share your success story? Visit phillyfortunetalks.com/guest and let's inspire together.